We have another individual that has been generous enough to share their retirement numbers with me. I'm going to do another case, and this case is for Alice. Alice is a 62-year-old, unmarried with no children woman living in the DMV area, and that is the Washington, D.C. area. So Alice wants to retire and asked me to work up our numbers and show her what retirement would look like. So Alice fortunately has a good job earning $120,000 a year. She can dedicate anywhere from $2,500 to $5,000 a month towards the goal of retirement. And Alice also has a condominium that she currently owns, but she wants to sell that condominium at some point in the future before retirement and move to a quieter community, but remain in Maryland. Her current assets that are dedicated for retirement, she has an annuity, and I'll talk a little bit more about annuities for $243,000. She has a high yield savings account for $50,000 and a second high yield savings account for $100,000. She also has an rollover IRA, traditional rollover IRA from Vanguard with about $94,000 and a rollover Roth IRA account at Vanguard for about $7,800. She also has a 401k, I'm assuming with her current employer, with about $9,200 in it. So, one thing that I want to point out with Alice's case, anytime a person wants to do something big in their 60s when they're closing in on retirement, and something big in her case is selling one home and buying another home, typically I ask if the person could work until age 70. Now, Alice specifically said that she wants to be able to pay off her new home entirely in cash. And the money that's in the high yield savings account is set aside for that purpose. I didn't quite get into how much equity her current property has, et cetera, how much property values are in Maryland. But property has risen to a point where it's almost impossible to buy a house outright in cash. That would be the best option for retirement savings to own the house outright in cash. But the reality is, for most home purchases, you're going to go into it with some kind of mortgage. And especially in the Washington, D.C. area, that is likely to be the case. So I'm going to talk a little bit about that. And when people are buying properties in their 60s, typically it means you're going to work until bare minimum 70 because it's a big event that often requires you to carry a mortgage forward. And just remember, if you're planning to buy a property near retirement, you have to have income to be able to qualify for a mortgage and to be able to close on a property. So it's always pretty much best to do that while you are working. If you're trying to purchase property and you are retired and you only have your Social Security, it becomes very complicated to close on that property because the bank or the mortgage lender is going to look for proof of income and demand that proof of income before they close on that property. So I am going to switch over to my computer where we're going to look at the numbers together, looking at Alice's case on my desktop. And once again, just to talk through Alice's situation, Alice is a 62-year-old woman living in Maryland and the DC, Virginia, Maryland area. She's going to retire. The number that I'm going to give her is age 70. And the reason I'm giving her that is because she's trying to buy property between now and when she retires. And that's a pretty big financial deal. And when people have pretty big financial deals this close to retirement, it's typically an ask that they work until age 70. She has a great income of $120,000 a year. She can save anywhere from $2,000 to $5,000 each month towards the goal of retirement. Her birthday is April 1963. She's not married and doesn't have any dependents. These are balances on all her accounts. Her Vanguard rollover IRA has a balance of $93,365. Her Vanguard Roth IRA has $7,895 in it. Her current 401k has $9,149. She has a high yield savings account with $100,000, and she has a second high yield savings account of $50,000. Now there's a strike through in both of those accounts. And the strike through is because the first high yield savings account with $100,000 is going to be used as down payment on her new home when she sells her current condo. So I don't want to include it in the retirement conversation because that money is going towards a home down payment. The second high yield savings account with 50,000 has a strike through in that because that's going to be her emergency fund. And I typically don't like to include cash emergency funds in retirement savings. So it's there, but I'm taking it off the table for now and not including it in full retirement planning. At Social Security, I've seen Alice's Social Security statement. Her estimated Social Security at age 70 is $4,076 a month, and her annuity payment is $9,772 a year. Now, let me talk a little bit about annuities. I do have clients with annuities, and I think annuities can make sense and be the right decision in a very specific set of circumstances for a very specific set of people. I've also seen annuities widely oversold, meaning they were provided as the solution for everyone and everything. And after several years of owning the annuity, we realized that the annuity that was provided to the client, often by another financial advisor, wasn't the best solution or didn't really make sense in their situation. So I take a very cautious approach to annuities. I actually had to send an email to Alice asking for more information on the annuity. There are different types of annuity. There are fixed and there are variable annuity. Fixed annuities invest in fixed income instruments like treasuries. Variable annuities invest in typically the stock market in stocks, bonds, and mutual funds. Variable annuities tend to have a higher rate of return than fixed annuities. People buy fixed annuities for certainty. They want to know how much their asset is returning, and they also want to know how much they'll be getting every single month. So fixed annuities can make sense for someone who's extremely risk averse and just wants to know how much money they're going to receive every month, where a variable annuity may make more sense for someone who wants to have a fixed amount of money coming in every month, but also wants to enjoy some of the growth in the stock market. This particular annuity is a fixed annuity. This is not the final amount, the $9,772. This is not the final amount that Alice will receive when she retires. Every year that she doesn't take this annuity, she gets a little bit more money, but we have to have a starting point somewhere. And we're just going to go with this 9,700 to start off with. Her Social Security is pretty high at age 70 and getting about $4,000 a month. How much did Alice want to spend in retirement? It seems like Alice can live pretty lean. She can live on anywhere from $2,500 to $3,000 a month, but the ideal goal would be $6,000 a month. And I think $6,000 a month in retirement is much more reasonable and realistic, especially when you live in the DC, Virginia, Maryland area. That area has a pretty high cost of living. And I'm surprised she can live on 2,500 to 3,000, but I would never build a retirement that low for someone living in that particular part of the nation because I know it is an expensive part of the nation and I know that it's only going to become more expensive in time. So I gave Alice a spending of $72,000 a year or $6,000 a month in retirement. Now, can she make this work? Potentially. Basically, she has to put pedal to metal between age 62 and 70 and saving for retirement. And the preliminary plan of what I would like Alice to do is I would like Alice to max out her 401k contribution to 30,500 a year. It's going to go up every single year, but whatever it is that year, I want her to max it out. And essentially, this is because she doesn't have that much in IRAs or 401ks at this point and really need to build up these cash balances as quickly as possible. That is the equivalent of about $25.50 per month coming out of your paycheck to go into the 401k, but with a salary of $120,000 a year and a very lean lifestyle, Alice, you can do this. You can definitely do this. In addition to that, I would love to see Alice putting $2,500 a month into high yield savings account one. And this is the money that is going to be used to pay on the new condo. I want her to get as close as possible to paying off that mortgage. And basically adding $2,500 a month would add about $30,000 a year to this pot. And hopefully, between the balance in the high yield savings account when she's ready to buy and the cash that she clears from the equity in her current condo, hopefully she can get as close as possible to paying off that condo. She can actually pay off that condo in full and go into retirement without a mortgage. Also, a word about condos. Condos are a little bit tricky in retirement because condos, even though you are done paying off the condo, you still have the HOAs, still have property tax maintenance and insurance. You'll always have expenses associated with a condo, even a single family home, you'll always have expenses associated with that. But it's really the HOA with condos that can get out of control. You have no say so over the HOA. It depends on the condominium building, the management, reserves. There's a lot of factors that are well outside of your control. I have seen a few select cases among retirees where they've gotten into a community and then 3 years after they bought into the community, the HOA fee absolutely explodes, like double or triple what it originally was. And it's often a factor of insurability, meaning insurance exploded in the area and they have to vastly raise the HOA fees in order to cover insurability, or they bought into a community without reserve. Alice, if you're looking into a condominium community, please do check out the HOA and please do check out the reserves and the financials of the HOA to make sure that they have adequate reserves. You don't want to end up in a situation where you purchase a home and then a few years after you purchase it, the HOA fee explodes and becomes something unmanageable. For anyone looking for a condo, check out the HOA and ask for the financials and the balance sheet to make sure that they have adequate reserves to handle come what may. So let's take a closer look at this year by year. This is a 60/40 portfolio return based on historical portfolio returns starting in 2003. This is based on the S&P 500 index fund. Since Alice is so close to retirement, I suggest a more conservative portfolio profile will probably make sense for her. So many retirees have a 60/40, meaning 60% stock, 40% bond split. I think that would be most appropriate for her. So let's take a look at the 401k balance. If Alice begins maxing out her 401k balance, we can grow it really quickly. Because remember, she's throwing down 30,500 each year into her 401k. I didn't ask about match. I don't know if her company's matching her or not. I'm assuming they're not, but if they do match, even better. Even if the company is matching, you still want to contribute 30,500 every year. You don't want to change up your contribution to accommodate the match. The match is just extra gravy at this point. So once she starts saving, she blows past the 100,000 in savings point pretty quickly. So by the time she's 64, she'll have more than 100,000. She's crossed the 250,000 threshold by time she's 59, and by time she's 70, she has about $348,000 in her 401k savings by the time she retires. And that's pretty darn good. That's more than the average American. But you have to remember, she also has a rollover balance at Vanguard for a traditional IRA and a Roth IRA. So if we add up the 401k and the money that's sitting in the traditional and the Roth rollover, she would have about $453,000, which is a considerable amount of money. Now, the difference between the IRA and the 401k, I didn't give the same rate of return to the IRAs because I don't know what they're invested in. I just assume they're sitting there in a money market. They could be doing something else, but I just said, let me just be conservative and assume it's sitting in the money market. So ideally, it actually could be a little bit more than this if the Vanguard traditional IRA and Roth IRA are invested like the money going into the 401k. So this could be anywhere between 450, maybe up to 500,000 saved for retirement. And that's actually more than many Americans have saved for retirement. So that's pretty darn good if she has that. So let's take a look at a few other variables when Alice is 70. I want to point out that Alice purchases a condo when she is 67. And if she purchases a condo at 67 and follows through with this plan to put away 2,500 a month into a high yield savings account between age 62 and 67, she should have anywhere between 280 to $300,000 stashed away in that high yield savings account. So even if that can't fully purchase a condo, which it, in this area it probably can't, it's a pretty darn significant down payment. And if she takes whatever equity from her existing condo, maybe she can get pretty close to paying off a condo or having a very small mortgage for when she retires. The reason why I said age 67 for this, because remember, if you're purchasing property and you're close to retirement, you need to be working because in order to close on the property, if you need a mortgage or if you need financing, you pretty much have to be working a job. Otherwise, they're going to look at your social security and try to build a mortgage based on that. And it just creates a host of problems in closing on a property. I said 67. Alice really didn't give me an age, but she said for retirement. I'm like, okay, 3 years before you retire, you go ahead and sell the property and you do it and when you were 67. So let's look at the first year of retirement here at age 70. Okay. So we have 450,000 ish in retirement savings. Social Security every year will be about 58,684. This isn't just Social Security, this is also annuity. She's going to get about $815 a month in annuity. I said she's spending about $72,000 a year or $6,000 a month. So between the Social Security and the spending amount is a difference of about $13,316. That has to come up from the 401k. So she's going to start taking that amount from the 401k. Okay. So let's go through and look at all the years of retirement. Alice also has longevity in her family. So I gave her a life expectancy until age 90. So basically, we need this to hold out for 20 years in retirement. And when I reset this and go through all the years, it actually works. It actually works. And when Alice reaches the age of 90, and if she passes away at age 90, she may actually have over $1 million. Now, do I think Alice will really have over $1 million at this point? No, I don't. And reason being, this doesn't account for emergencies. This doesn't account for car that breaks down, roof that leaks, a flood that happens in your condo, increase in condominium association fees. I did increase the cost of living by 3%. So that is already factored in. I did not increase the Social Security because that is a cost of living increase that is created every year by the government, and I just can't do it based on future information. I also did not increase her annuity because I don't know exactly what her annuity is tied into. So I'm assuming Social Security and annuity remains the same. I'm assuming that there's a 3% inflation rate. Even with that factored in, it's doable. I think she's probably going to retire. And this is if she's careful and watch her pennies. I think by the time she's in her 90s, she's probably going to have in the ballpark of 700,000 ish when she dies. Now, 700,000 ish in today's dollars is very different than 700,000 ish 25 years from now. Every 25 years or so, the value of the dollar halves. So if history holds true, that 750,000 would have about $350,000 in purchasing power as of today. It's not a lot of money, but it's not a little bit of money. And it would also give Alice a cushion in case she runs into a long-term care event. Now, only 4% of Americans have long-term care policies. So I assume that Alice does not have a long-term care policy and will not buy one. Everyone at that point is left to self-insure. Long-term care is staggeringly expensive even today. It's only going to become even more expensive 25 years from now because it doesn't adhere to the 3% inflation rules. Its inflationary factor is actually much higher. It's more like 7 or 8% a year for long-term care. Long-term care by this point, and would be year 2053, is going to be just astronomically expensive. Maybe we've come up with another solution by 2053. Maybe they're bots or robots or AI or someone, I don't know, something that can do long-term care and do it sufficiently so that it can be mass affordable versus being affordable only to the very wealthy, which is pretty much the predicament that this is in. It's only going to be accessible to the very wealthy at this point. Bottom line, Alice, if you're willing to put pedal to the metal and do the full contribution amount and you're willing to work until age 70, I think you can do this. I think you can do this. You're also going to have to keep your spending in a $6,000 a month range. I would also say this, and I said this for the last scenario that I outlined. I think you need to sit down with a certified financial planner and verify my numbers, especially anywhere from 3 to 5 years before retirement. Look for someone who is a certified financial planner. There are certified financial planners that work hourly, and this is a couple of hours of work to put together this information. But you need to make absolutely certain, Alice, that you are on path. And the market returns for the next 20 years are going to be very different than market returns for the past 20 years. That's going to broadly impact everyone's retirement. You need to have a second pair of eyes at this. Don't just take my information and run with it, but get checked out closer to retirement to make sure you are on path to lead the retirement of your dreams. So I'm going to switch back over to my camera and say a few words in closing. But Alice, I think you have the preliminary makings of a plan and a good retirement here. So, just a few highlights from the conversation with Alice. Just remember, if you're planning to do something big close to retirement, meaning you're planning to sell a home and buy a home close to retirement, you may need to consider working until age 70. And if you are going to buy and sell a home, you really do need to be working a job when that transaction happens. Don't retire and then try to buy, sell a home, because the bank, the mortgage, the real estate agent is going to look for proof of income, and oftentimes, Social Security is not sufficient proof of income to be able to do the transaction you want to get yourself into the home that you want to get into. Another thing that is very important, annuities. This is the first retirement scenario that I've done with an annuity. If you own an annuity, a lot of people take the set it and forget it attitude towards annuity. They're not really watching what's going on with it. They don't really check into it every now and again. You should be receiving statements, and you should at least once a year check in on that annuity and understand what it is and what it's doing and how much is anticipated to pay out and exactly when. With annuities, the longer you wait, the more money you get. But in some cases with annuities, that's not necessarily the case. And you're actually missing out on money by waiting too long to take that annuity. And so you want to be on top of it and understand how that annuity functions so that you understand when is the optimal time to take that annuity and how much money you will be getting from that. Condominiums. Once again, with condominiums, be very careful. Make sure you look into the HOA. Is it a strong functional HOA? And also make sure that you look at the financials to make sure that building has reserve. There are cases where I've had clients buy into a building only to realize that the finances were in basket case status and major work needed to be done and there were no reserves. And so they had to do a special assessment of tens of thousands of dollars in the building in order to raise money to be able to do common work. And you don't want to be in a situation like that. So you want to look very closely at whatever condominium project you're buying into to make sure that the HOA is safe and they have adequate reserves to handle come what may. So there you have it. Tell me what you like, tell me what you don't like. And if you found this information useful, please share and subscribe.